Hello, and welcome to Stowe Talks, a podcast designed to support people going through a relationship breakdown and all the challenges this brings. I'm Matthew Taylor.
And I'm Lisa Gatchell, family lawyers at Stowe Family Law, and today we're joined by dating coach and matchmaker Laura Buckley from Secret Alchemy to explore all the things dating after divorce. So welcome, Laura. It's really lovely to have you with us today. Can you start by perhaps just giving us a bit of background about you and how you found yourself in the dating world?
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's a couple of things. So I used to be a probation officer, and I used to be really interested in people and behaviour and psychology and why people behave in a certain way. And so once I decided to leave this career, I wanted to still be in psychology and still be with people and relationships and behaviour, but with a slightly different twist. And then on the flip side, I was the worst single ever. I was single for approximately 11 years. And during that time, I was dating what's a polite word I could use?
Tom, Dick and Harry.
Loser. Yeah. That's better. Every loser under the sun, I literally dated them. And I was living in Leeds at the time, and I know you guys have got offices up in Leeds. And I got to the point where I thought there were no single guys left in Leeds, so I should probably leave. So I went off travelling for a bit and sort of restructured what I wanted my life to look like and went from there. But because I had such a bad time being single, and when it came to looking for a new career, I still like the idea of helping people, and that's always been me throughout my career. And I thought, what else can I do that help people? Dating. And I just wish that I'd had a dating coach or a matchmaker or something when I was single, because it was pretty bad.
So dating is kind of terrifying for a lot of people. And I speak as someone who's been with his wife for about 20 years and has never been on a date with anyone else. So the thought of dating to me is like absolutely terrifying. But for people going through a divorce, the thought of going through a date is normally fairly scary, or often a case of, oh my God, never again, over my dead body. So how do you get people into the mindset of thinking, look, you've been through this often quite traumatic experience of divorce. How do you get people into looking to the future and thinking that they're ready to start dating again?
I think it's really just about getting people to understand themselves a little bit better. And people always ask about dating after divorce and when will I know that I'm ready, kind of thing. And it's different for everybody, because you may have been through a divorce that was completely amicable and everyone's fine, you've come through it, or you might have been through a really abusive relationship, or you may have been single, you may not have been single for a very long time. So it's different for every person. But for me, when you're getting back into dating, it's about being clear about what you want, what you'll accept, what your deal breakers are. When I was single, I had no idea. I always use the expression, I was chucking darts, and I was dating all the wrong people because I had no idea what I wanted. And I think if you just come out of a divorce and you're looking to get back into the dating world, it's being really clear about what it is that you want and what would be acceptable to you. And then trying to find a safe way that suits you for dating, because there are so many different options now between matchmaking and online dating and events, doing something a bit more organically. It's about finding what's best for you and what's comfortable. Because it is tricky out there, especially when you've been married for a long time, and the dating world has shifted somewhat in the last 10 to 20 years. So, if people have been married for a long time and then for 20 years, say like yourself, and then come back into dating, it can be a bit icky and a bit tricky. But there are lots of places where you can get information online, and obviously people like me, coaches, would help you get through that process and get you out the other side and dating in a way that you want to be dating.
You talked about sort of shooting out the darts. What are the red flags that people shouldn't be ignoring when they're looking at dating?
Okay, how long have we got? There are a few. For example, I mean, the over-investing. When people ask me for the biggest tip, it's also a bit of a flag. It's the over-investing in people. So it's a bit like the love bombing. I don't know if you've heard much about love bombing. Yeah, I'm sure it's something you're probably aware of quite a lot in your roles. But it's that kind of thing. If somebody's over-investing in you very quickly and show you far too much attention, and then when they don't even know you, that for me is a really big red flag, because it's not you that's their interest really, it's the someone, it's the behaviour, it's the control, and it's just not. If someone's throwing loads of affection at me and loads of interest, and one I hear all the time is people are I'm talking to this person, I'm talking to that person, but he got a bit annoyed because I didn't text to say goodnight. I think, have you met this person yet? No. So it's these tiny little behaviours that don't really seem very much at first. And also, if you're dating for the first time after divorce, this can be quite flattering, especially if the person that you're talking with or you've been on a couple of dates with is quite attractive, you feel a bit of chemistry, you may be inclined to kind of ignore these little red flags because you think, oh, this is nice, this really great person is really interested in me, so I'm just going to ignore those. But for me, that's the biggest one, because it can lead to all kinds of things, all kinds of worries.
Yeah, and it must be really tough because when people come through a divorce, generally their self-esteem is not going to be at its highest. So, I mean, we all like to be flattered. If you get someone who is paying you attention and, you know, you feel like you're the centre of their world, that must be incredibly, you know, life-affirming and give you a boost to your confidence. So I think that must be a really tough thing to kind of be on the guard for that.
It really is. It's a really and even people who are like seasoned daters like myself, you know, I should actually say I'm married now, but back when I was dating, that was my biggest downfall, because my self-esteem was so low. Anybody who showed me a little bit of interest, I was there like a little puppy. And like you said, it's really difficult because if your self-esteem is low, you want that person to pick you up, and they're showing you attention, and therefore you go all in because you think this is great. So yeah, it is very tricky. And then also on the flip side, the start of a relationship should be like that. You should be really into each other. It should feel really nice. It should feel really fun. And it is, to be honest, thoroughly depressing thinking, oh, you know, where's that red flag? You know, I'm waiting for it to go wrong. I remember doing the same when I met my husband. I was like, he's too good to be true. It's going to go wrong. And you know, when you're a bit jaded from dating, you're constantly looking for that. But so it's finding the balance between, does this feel nice, or is this starting to feel a bit icky? If it's starting to feel a bit icky and it feels a bit too much too soon, then that's okay. You can rein it back. You can pull it back. And if they don't understand that boundary, that's when you need to change it.
What's the best ways of putting those boundaries in place?
Being clear about your boundaries straight up. You know, I think lots of people bring different things to the dating world now, especially when you date in your 40s, 50s, 60s. People have had relationships before and they've learned from those relationships. I think it's really important that, you know, you can be quite clear with people and say, you know, I am looking for a relationship, but I don't want this at this time. I don't want that at this time. When I work with coaching clients, we put together a dating plan. So we look at sort of the first 5 dates, then the next 5 dates, and then 2 months on. So it's like, what is okay to me at this point? What would I expect at this point? If I don't get what I expect at this point, how will I handle it? Or if I see this red flag at this point, what would I do with it? So it's about having a plan, because the other thing you find is when you really like somebody, all your ability to make a good decision goes out the window because you're caught up in that moment and you think, oh yeah, this guy's great or this girl's great and I love it. But then they do something and you think, I'm going to ignore that because I really like this person. Whereas when you're not in that heightened state and you make a decision and you're very clear in your own mind about what your boundaries are, you're in a much better position to enforce those boundaries when you get into that situation. I think it's just about being really, really clear in your own mind about what is acceptable to you and what you value.
And is it about that clarity with yourself as much as anything? Because it seems to me from what you're saying that, you know, you were talking about when you were throwing the darts, you didn't really know what it was that you were looking for. You hadn't identified that. Is that kind of step one, to be clear in your own mind? Absolutely,
100%. Because if you don't clients, well, I will always say to clients straight off, what do you want? And they'll give me a list of what they don't want. So I don't want somebody that does this, and I don't want somebody that does that. And I'm always like, no, I didn't ask you what you don't want. I'm asking you what you do want. And people just don't. They look at me blankly. I did it yesterday with a new client because he's a matchmaking client, and I was like, so what are you looking for? And he was like, so I've sent him away with an exercise to do to really start unpicking what he wants, because fundamentally you can't change somebody else's behaviour, but you can change your own. And I wish that I'd changed my own when I was single, because I was the common denominator. I kept making the same mistakes over and over again because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And I destroyed my self-esteem and made dating really difficult for myself because I picked all the wrong people and I wasn't clear, I wasn't boundaried, and I didn't have a clue what I wanted.
How did you come out of that? If you were in kind of a dating spiral, I imagine it gets quite tiresome and you almost then start to think, well, you know, it's never going to work. Was it just for you? Was it meeting the right person, or were you able to, some of these techniques that you now use, is that how you developed those?
Kind of yes and kind of no. So I'd reached a point in 2012 when I was just broken, and another relationship had ended, and I mean, it's a perfect example. I'd been on and off with this person for 2.5 years. He made it very clear at the beginning that he didn't want children or to get married, but I stuck with it because I thought I'll change his mind. And you know what a waste. He told me at the beginning and I ignored it, and it was a waste of 2.5 years of my life. And I was just so destroyed that I just had to change things and move. So I decided to leave, and I know that not everybody has the opportunity to just up sticks and leave, so I get that. I do appreciate that I was in a lucky position because I'd got some money saved up and I went off travelling, and I decided that I was going to travel for 7 months. I wasn't going to think about getting married, I wasn't going to think about a boyfriend, I wasn't going to think about dating, none of it. And I just went away and I spent time focusing on myself. And actually, when you take away the anxiety and the pressure and the stress of dating, it's quite liberating. And so I did incorporate that into my coaching program, because when people start coaching with me, I get them to stop dating. And it's just a really nice way for people to detox, to stop stressing about the apps, to stop thinking about when the next person is going to come along, what they might be like, and just to get clear on themselves and to work on us, to work on you, because it is about mindset, it is about confidence, it is about self-esteem. And I just really feel like dating coaching is, or my program in particular, is about that. It's not necessarily, I'm going to tell you where to meet the next person. It's about getting clear for you and like understanding yourself better. And that's what I did while I was travelling. Probably would have been cheaper just to find a dating coach, but I had a good time. And then when I came back, I couldn't go back to Leeds because there weren't any single guys in Leeds that I hadn't dated. So I moved to London. And then I did something which I'd not done before. I dated really differently, and I kind of multiple dated. So I dated this guy. Obviously, things weren't. I wasn't intimate with any of them, but I was exploring different things. And then when I met a guy that I did like, then I would explore that more, so to speak. And then, I met my husband in London.
So it strikes me a lot of it's about being open to new possibilities then. And if you were a bit, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like if you were closed off, if you were looking for a certain thing or not looking for a certain thing, and then perhaps opening the net a bit wider, is that something that can be useful if people find they're getting in a dating sort of spiral, like Lisa said?
Do you mean geographically opening the dating?
No. I mean, well, if you want to move to London, that's fine. But no, in terms of, speaking to, go on dates with multiple people, and different sort of experiences, and because we're all creatures of habit, aren't we? And I can imagine that in that dating cycle you kind of repeat the same thing and probably repeat the same mistakes, and
absolutely.
A bit of forced change of behaviour's got to help a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's different for different people. That worked for me at that moment in time. It might not have worked for me when I was up in Leeds, because I was struggling to find one person to date, let alone multiple people. But London's obviously a completely different pool, and there's new people and it's exciting. But some people don't want to date like that. Some people would prefer to date one person, see how that goes. If it doesn't work, move on. And I think everybody's different, but it's about getting clear on what works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, trying something, like you say, trying something different.
You mentioned that dating has moved on quite a bit, or changed quite significantly in the last 20 years. And I think, from discussions that I've had with friends, when there is a mention of dating, apps are immediately talked about. And there, if you go onto App Store, there's, I wouldn't like to count how many dating apps there are now. How do you pick a dating app? How do you make a dating app work for you? Can they work? I mean, it feels like sometimes it's a bit of a shopping list. And it's almost like where you're, if someone's swiping really quickly between pictures, how can you genuinely know on a photo whether that person could potentially be, the next Mr. or Mrs.?
Oh, I mean, if I had the answer to that question, I'd bottle it and sell it and make a lot of money. It's a really tricky one. Listen, like dating apps, people still think if they're not on the apps, they're going to miss out, and therefore you have to be on because you have FOMO. And what if your partner is on there and you miss them because you decided not to be on the apps? But then people go on the apps, and then it can be quite depressing swiping. But then there's also people who are meeting long term. My sister met her husband online. People are meeting online. And sometimes when you say now that you met somebody, like we met in a pub, and so people say, oh my gosh, that's unusual. And there is an expectation, I think, that people would meet online. It's a way to meet people, but for me, I found it quite disposable. And because when I was swiping through people, I'm like, oh my God, somebody's doing this to me. Somebody's just going, no. And it's just, I don't know. And when I speak to clients, everyone says the same thing. They talk about how people ghost. They talk about how nobody replies. They talk about how the chat is really boring. And it just feels like a conveyor belt of misery, for want of a better description. But it does work because people are meeting online. And I think it is, again, comes back to what I was saying about knowing what you're looking for, to making sure that you're on the right app, because there are apps for all kinds of things now. I heard about one the other day. I want to say it was called Muddy something. I can't remember what the other word was, and I'd not heard of it before. But it was for people who live in the countryside. I was like, oh, okay. And then you've got your obvious ones like Tinder and Bumble and Hinge, and what you've got apps for people who are literally just looking for hookups. You've got apps who are looking for people who work in uniform services. Whatever it is you're into, you can find an app for it. I guess one of the things people don't really understand as well is that if you go and Google like the types of users, so for example, Tinder is 80% men. So if you're a guy and you go on Tinder, there aren't going to be that many women on Tinder, and Tinder now has this reputation for being a bit of a hookup site. But a friend of mine literally told me this morning about how she's just met this guy, and then he's great. So everybody has different experiences of each app, and I think it's just about going through and figuring out what you want, and then looking at all the apps and seeing which one works for you.
So if I was stepping into the dating pool for the first time following a divorce, and I was thinking, do you know what? Some friends told me about an app. I want to go for this app. What should I be doing to make my profile stand out so that it's working for me? Are there tips? Is it complete luck? Is there stuff you can do to make yourself look a bit better and to attract the right people? I really sound like I'm doing it for my own personal benefit here. I shouldn't have started this description in the first person. But, is there stuff that you can do that makes your sort of profile stand out a bit? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, the obvious things are photographs. And, I'd really like to say that we're a non-shallow population, but unfortunately we are. And, when people are scrolling through lots and lots of profiles, it is photographs that make people stand out. So one of the things I would always do is make sure that people have got really great photos, because the things you don't want is a group shot. You don't want a grainy shot. You don't want a shot that's from a distance with hats on, with glasses on. God forbid you should be near a car or carrying a dead large fish. Those kind of things just, turn people off. And the group one for me is always a good one. People like to put pictures on of them doing something really exciting, and you look and there's a group and you think, I don't know which one you are. So you need to have the one that people will see when they're swiping needs to be close up, clear, recent, and decent. It needs to be a good shot. And then the ones afterwards you can use to show off your personality a little bit. But the main one that you're looking to get people to stop swiping. That's the aim of the game. And then once you've got people to stop swiping, you need to use what you've written in I call it the blah. What you've written in the blah to get people to message you or to reply to your message. And so again, I tend to do online profile audits for people, and I get the same stuff all the time. So, what's a really important quality to you? And people will put kindness, and I think, well, like it needs to be that's kind of a given, isn't it? Right? You want a partner that's kind. You don't want a partner that's unkind, because.
Well, that's it. You can't imagine anyone ever writing unkindness. So, like,
dishonest.
If no one would ever put the opposite, then, like, kind of what's the point?
Although you say that, but to be fair, if someone wrote unkind, that might actually prompt me to go and message them and be like, "Oh, what do you mean you want somebody unkind?" And that's what you want to do. You need something in your blah that makes people want to message you. So if you say something a little bit controversial, that makes people go, "Oh, I want to just reply to that." Or you say something, one of the things I like to say to people, if you're only dating within your local town, pick something like a cafe or a restaurant that you really like and comment on it and say, I really love the coffee at X, Y, and Z. And then people will be like, oh, I love the coffee there too, or I love that cafe. It just triggers something in people's brains to comment or to message you and to start that interaction. Whereas if you just put kind, what have I got? What can I do with that? It doesn't make me want to message you. So it's just about using your imagination essentially to think what would make me stop scrolling and read and want to reply. What would I like from somebody to make me reply? Do you see what I mean?
You've got to attract the attention and get people's attention after. I suppose there's the initial visual attraction. but there has to be something a bit more to it to make you stand out, doesn't there?
Exactly.
And that makes sense.
But also with the picture, when you're saying, have a really nice, it's got to be clear and all the rest of it, part of me thinks, but, my best photo on my iPhone is not what somebody would be getting if we were in a relationship 99% of the time. So are we thinking that, it should be clear and it should be recent and it should be a nice one, but it shouldn't have any, it has to look like you as well. It can't have any filters or anything like that on it.
Yeah, definitely. I've got one particular matchmaking client, and she said, and I thought this was genius. She said the photos that she puts on are really just of her with hardly any makeup on, just being very casual. They are lovely photos, but they're just really cash. So she says when she turns up for a date, they're not disappointed because she's done up with loads of makeup on and got a nice outfit on. So instead of them going, oh, you don't look like your photos, they've gone, oh, you look better than your photos. I was like, genius.
Oh, genius. Yeah.
So that's clever, but you've got to have a certain amount of self-confidence to pull that off in the first place, don't you?
Yeah, she has. Great.
I'm not sure anybody would swipe for a picture of me without my makeup on and my hair pulled back. I mean, these guys get to see it enough, nobody else needs to see that.
Absolutely.
Well, I definitely put my makeup on. So let's say that you've done the app thing, and someone's chatting to you, and you decide to meet up and have that first date. So what are the real expert top tips for how you should approach a first date?
Keep it casual. Don't overinvest, and don't put too much pressure on it, and keep it short. I'm a real advocate for things like meeting for a coffee at lunchtime from work, so that there's no, if it's a bad date, you've got a reason to leave because you have to get back for work. If you're getting on well, it's like, oh, this has been really great. Let's do it again another time. You're not putting any pressure on it. The more pressure you put on it, the harder it is for you, and the more of a downfall there can be. For example, I spoke to a friend earlier. She matched with the guy on Tinder the other day, and he said, "Do you want to meet tomorrow?" And she went, "Okay." And she met him after the gym. She'd been to the gym and she went to meet him in her gym clothes. And I was like, that's bold. But I like it. They had a great date. They had a really great date, really nice time, spent quite a lot of time together, and are meeting up again next week. And I just thought I was really proud of her because she didn't go home and get all glammed up and put loads of pressure on it. She just went, well, it's just an addition to my day. I'm going to go to the gym and then I'll go and meet this guy. And if he likes me, he likes me. And if I like him, I like him. Oh, that brings me to another thing. I had another client who always spent time worrying during a date about whether he liked her and gave zero thought to whether she liked him.
Yeah, that's gonna come across pretty poorly, isn't it?
So you need to be thinking about, is this is this somebody I want to see again? Don't worry about what they think, because if you don't like them, it doesn't matter what they think. It's about whether you can see enough in this person to go on another date. But the main thing is not to overinvest. Don't be having, first date definitely should not be a Friday or Saturday night. First date should definitely not be an expensive restaurant in the middle of town on a Saturday night. It shouldn't be. That's for later down the line when you know this person is worth giving up your Saturday night for. I would keep it simple, preferably a lunchtime coffee at work, so you've got a reason to leave. Easy way out if it's not what you want, and just keep it simple.
I think that's some really great advice. You were saying that, going back to the apps a minute, because you don't work with an app necessarily, do you? So you don't have your own app. You are a matchmaker. So can you just explain what the difference is and how that works?
Yeah, it's a bit more old-fashioned, really, I reckon. It's offline. There's no app, there's no website to look at. You don't go and look at people's profiles online. So essentially, say you wanted to be a matchmaking client, you'd come to me, we'd spend some time together getting to know each other. So really, again, goes back to the drilling down, what it is you're looking for, what the deal breakers are, where you would date, age of the person you date, whether children, the whole lot. So once I know exactly what you're about, what you're looking for, I then go off and try and find it. And I always explain it by saying, if you think about a recruitment consultant, if you were looking for a new job, you might go to a recruitment consultant who would help you write your CV, look for a job for you, find out what it is you want in your career, put you forward for that job. Then you do the interview, and then they debrief afterwards. So that's exactly what I do, but with dating. So I get to know what you want. I help you write your profile. I go out and look for those people, and then we debrief after the date. So it's exactly the same thing. But matchmaking is slower. It takes time because obviously I need to go out and look for those people. So I think sometimes people get frustrated by the amount of time it takes. because obviously when you're online, you can do this all day long, and you could look at 100 people. So, with matchmaking, I'm literally going to give you one profile at a time, and you're going to have to trust me that this person is what you've asked for. It's not just somebody I've gone like that. So it's a lot more focused. It's a lot more determined. It's a different way to date, and I feel like it's less disposable because it's much more targeted.
When you say that you're going out to search for people, I've got visions of Davina McCall, and was it Street Mate?
Oh my god,
Street Mate, I thought of that as well. Oh, I love that.
Where she used to stop people in the street. I'm assuming that's not what you do.
No, but I think I need to. That would be brilliant. I might go to central London and just start doing Street Mate on people. I'll just get somebody with a camera. That would be amazing. No, it's not quite like, it's a bit like it's a headhunting, so it's being a bit like a recruiter. So I'm looking through. I've got a network, so I'd look through my network to see if anybody matched. I could also speak to other matchmakers. We collaborate quite a lot, so I dip into their pools of people as well. And then social media, it's essentially going out and looking for these kind of people all over the place. And it's amazing where you bump into people, and then friends of friends, and yeah, it's just being aware. I'm all the time. I'm like, every time I come across any person I've not met before, I'm like, oh, hello.
Yeah, it's scanning mode on.
I know, my husband's like, stop looking for single men. Because women put themselves out there a bit more than guys, and so women are much more likely to come and say, help me, what can you do? Whereas guys are a little bit more reticent, and so it always seems like most of my clients are female, so I am looking for guys. So I'm posting all over social media, I need single guys, and my husband's just like...
Very understanding husband.
Yeah.
So when your clients come to you, if you've got, you've got a lady come to you and say, look, I want to be match made, is it a case that they will say, I want X, Y, and Z, they need to look like this, they need to have this sort of sense of humour, they need to do this? Or is it a bit more, less shopping listy? Do you do, what's the process involved of you kind of saying, I think the right person for you is someone like this? I'm just really interested in how you arrive between you at the kind of the ideal picture of what someone for them looks like.
It's a bit of both, really, because it's amazing how much people think they have a type, and I would have always said I had a type, but I don't really, and so it's kind of unpicking that a little bit. And we talk about deal breakers, so the things that you definitely want them to have, or the things they can't have. So some people might be say twice recently they definitely cannot have bad teeth. It's a deal breaker. It's the main thing, teeth, and I'm like, okay, I can work with that one. But sometimes people might also say something like, I definitely want to date somebody who doesn't have children. So it's kind of just working with those. So it's looking at what is a definite and then what we could acquiesce on. Because obviously I don't have a magic wand. If you give me a shopping list like this, I mean, hopefully I can find somebody that matches most of the things, but some things might not hit. So it's about understanding what we definitely have to have, and then things that we can got a bit of leeway on. But again, I tend to do a little bit of informal coaching around the matchmaking as well, just because, again, it's the getting clear, it's understanding what you want. Because sometimes, and I'm not saying all the time with my clients, but with coaching clients, they can come and say, I'm really struggling with dating. It's something about what I'm doing, it's not quite clicking, it's not quite working, and then we can work on that. I think sometimes with matchmaking clients, they're a bit further on in their journey, and they don't necessarily really understand what they want, but they just want to get dating, they just want to do it. So it is sometimes about kind of slightly coaching, nurturing, and getting them to the right place before they then go on to a date. But it's fun.
It sounds really fun.
Sounds more fun than probation.
Has anybody been arrested? No.
No, definitely more fun. And, it must be, I think what I sort of love about this topic and hearing about it from you is like the sense of there must be a huge amount of optimism, and especially in our line of work, there's not always a lot of optimism. I'm not going to lie about that. People are going through a tough time, and to have that kind of, this is what we can do, and people are getting really excited about going out on a date, or they must contact you and say, oh, that person you set me up with is amazing. I'm really excited. That must be like incredibly gratifying. Yeah,
I had one this week. One of my clients has just rented a property in London with his last match, so I'm like, I'm like, should I be buying a hat now? And he's like, I'll let you know. And he's like, you'll definitely come to the wedding, and I'm like, yay! And it's quite a funny one. And I was saying to somebody yesterday, it's kind of the conflict. I've been a probation officer for such a long time that I'm kind of caught up. I always look I shouldn't do, but I always look for the negative, and I sometimes have to rein myself in. But then the matchmaker in me is a real romantic, and so they've moved very, very quickly. And part of me goes, that's too soon, that's too soon. But the other part of me is like, oh my God, that's so soon, that's great. So it's a real conflict in my head. But like the matchmaker side of me is just really, I'm just really chuffed for them. It's great. Yeah.
So if someone's come through the process of divorce and they're starting to date, what are they, because obviously you work with people from all sorts of walks of life. You know, I have lots of people who've been single for a long time, and then you'll be working with people who've been through a divorce. Are there any particular bits of advice or kind of common characteristics that tend to apply to your post-divorce daters?
I think it's just the reticence to get involved again and worrying about being hurt. And I think there's a definite... I think why coaching is probably better for people who've come out of divorce before they go on into dating, just because there is an anxiety around dating when you've been hurt. Of course there is. But it's about recognising that people are different, and that just because one person behaved in that way in a relationship doesn't mean the next person will. But it takes confidence and it takes some self-esteem to be prepared to put your heart on the line again, I guess. I go back to thinking about myself, and when I got together with my husband, I nearly ended it about a month in, because I was like, I can't get hurt again. I just can't. I'm exhausted from all this hurt. And so I nearly ended it with him. And my best friend was like, you can't do that. What's wrong with you? Like, what if this is the guy? And so I did stick with it. And I think that's the same with people dating after divorce. It's the unknown, isn't it? It's the unknown of what this dating world's going to be like. It's unknown as to whether this will work out. And the chances are the first person you date probably won't be the person for you. But it is about getting the self-esteem and the confidence of dating, because confidence is about competence. And if you are not competent at dating because you haven't done it for a long time, then the best way to get competent and therefore confident in it is to practice and to have a go, and to not put all your eggs in one basket, but just to take it for what it is, take it at face value, just enjoy that little moment. And like I was saying in the answer before about not going out with somebody on a Saturday night on the first date, but just having a coffee after the gym, or having a coffee at lunchtime on the break from work, just because it'll kind of give you that little stepping stone to kind of dip your toe back in, but not really throw yourself in, because it is daunting out there when you're so used to being in a relationship.
Well, Laura, that's all been absolutely fascinating, and it's so interesting to hear about things. And like I say, the optimism about it is great. I think what we like to do a lot on Stowe Talks is leave people with a final sort of takeaway point. So what's the last tip that you'd leave people with if they're thinking, oh, maybe it's my time to get back into the dating pool? What would you say to them as a final sign-off?
Do you know what I'd say? Just be brave. At the end of the day, being brave is about being scared of something and doing it anyway. So just be brave. Take a leap of faith. You just never know who you're going to meet.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. So that's it for this episode of Stowe Talks. Thanks for listening. You can find out more about the work that Laura does at www.secretalchemy.co.uk. If you would like more information on our podcasts, head over to stowetalks.co.uk, and please rate, like, share and review this podcast where you can.